Okay, so we're looking at writing a report now. So writing a report, there are a number of considerations to be taken. Now, what I've done is to consider the ease of application. I want to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to have the structure of your report and do your report properly. Now, with a report, now I've been brooding about how with computer-based, when computer-based starts, your report will be, how the kind of workspace they will give you. Now, I've thought about this very strongly, and I think that maybe ultimately what will happen is that you would have both the spreadsheet and then the word processing document so that you can do your appendix separate from your report. Now, with paper and biro, it is usually a little bit tough to do that. So the idea is simple. If you understand, if we think about how we do office work, now if you're writing a report in the office, then usually the appendix is outside the report completely. So the appendix is an appendage to the report. So it's usually at the end of the report. However, for financial management and advanced financial management, a lot of times you will need to do the calculation first. All your calculations should be in the appendix. All your calculations should be in the appendix. It is very, very unprofessional, and you basically have lost your professional marks if you do a calculation and discuss under that calculation. That is very, very unacceptable. Now, please, many people throw away marks because of this mistake. You cannot have a discussion or you cannot have an analysis together with your calculation. All calculations should be done on the appendix, separate from the body of the report. So basically, I say if you're using paper and biro, if computer-based starts, then the likelihood is that they will give you a spreadsheet for you to do your computations and then the word processing for you to write your report. But with a paper and biro now, what you need to do is understand how to structure your report. Your report should be structured with the heading. So your heading will look something like this every single time. So it should look like TO. So TO depends on what they've asked you. So maybe to the board of directors, to the chief financial officer, to the chief executive officer, to some other senior committee, to an advisory group, whatever. So to whoever, so let's assume it was the board. So whatever the name in the question is. So to first, then the next thing you do is from, and please, I would emphasize this very strongly, please never write your name. Don't write your name. Don't write your, just maybe something like a consultant or whatever title they've given. They say you are so. Assume you are the consultant or you're the whatever, your senior advisor to something. So whatever they've called you, whatever title they've given you, that's the title you would use in the report. Please don't write your name. It's unacceptable. So to, from.
Sorry. Hi, Brian. Sorry to cut you short. What question is this?
No, we are just looking at the structure of writing a report.
Okay.
So to, from, then subject. Now, the subject is one of the interesting things and one of the challenges that people have with writing reports. Now, be careful. Your subject should be as brief as possible. Just pick the key points of what you want to do. Now, one of the tricks I can give you, I can suggest for you to make your subject very bland and always correct is, they are usually, I talk about the big four. There are four big parts of advanced financial management. It's either going to be investment appraisal, or valuation or reconstruction or risk management. So those are the 4 big areas. So your question 1 and your report will usually be in one of these 4 areas, either investment appraisal, valuation, reconstruction, or risk management. So your subject, you can make your subject easy by maybe saying the subject being, say if you were an investment appraisal question, so investment appraisal of so project or so company. Okay, so your report, your subject can be quite easy. Just summarize it, make it very, very simple, very brief, and don't waste time on trying to be very detailed with the subject. And finally, the final thing will be date. So that's your heading of the report. So date, exam date, you can just use the exam date easily, and that's that. So that's what your heading should look like.
Because I had 20K exactly, man.
So that's what your heading should look like. So once you've gotten your heading out of the way, the next thing, depending on how you're writing your report, is your appendix. Now this appendix is variable. Either you put your appendix before the heading, put it outside completely, or you can put your heading and then put the appendix under that. That's your prerogative. I don't mind, and I think it is even more professional for you to put the appendix outside the report completely. But if you put the appendix under the heading, it is still appended before you start writing your story. So it's acceptable for you to put your appendix. Now, the appendix is where all your calculations will be. All calculations should be done in the appendix.
But it's 30,000 appendix.
So you can label your appendix. You can have appendix 1, appendix 2, appendix 3, appendix 4, separate appendices, or you can have appendix 1 and then have all the different, or just write appendix and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, everything you're doing. That's very fine. So all your calculations should be done here. The only thing is, for every requirement that has a calculation, make sure that you structure it in a way that it is easy for a marker to understand what you're doing. Now, we now come to the main part of the report. Now, introduction.
When the woman has said going through this life, she goes rejoicing after finding the.
Okay. Now, introduction. The introductory part of your report. All you need to do is to get the key details of what you've been asked in the report. So basically, just look for what are the main things that have been asked in this report. Now, another thing very similar to the subject that is a challenge for students is keep your introduction very brief. You don't need more than 2 sentences. You don't need more than 2 sentences for your introduction. So look at the main things you've been asked. They've asked you to do an investment appraisal for a particular company and asked you to also calculate, say, the cost of capital. Then your introduction will be, this report seeks to carry out an investment appraisal and compute the cost of capital of so and so company. Keep it as brief as possible. Don't waste any time on it. So this one should not be more than 2 paragraphs. Now we'll now come to the body of the report. Now the body of the report is basically where we answer the questions. So answer So basically in the body of the report, you answer the worded requirements and give a summary of any computation made in the question. So you can use headings to distinguish between the different questions. So for example, if 1A is to calculate, say, Macaulay duration, then your heading 1 will be Macaulay duration, and then you explain what your findings were, whatever you calculated, just very, very briefly. Please keep all these things as brief as possible. Nobody is interested in reading a lot of story. All they just want to do is for you to show professionalism. So you answer your requirements in the body, and then finally you have your conclusion. Now with your conclusion, so the conclusion, just very briefly, okay, so very briefly summarize your findings and give your opinions of the general requirements of the question. Be concise. Don't just in so your findings should be in 1 or 2 paragraphs. Very, very brief. Okay. So 2 or 3 sentences. 3 or 4 sentences within 1 or 2 paragraphs. Very brief conclusion, the general conclusion to the main aspects of what have been, what the requirements are. Any question? Any question? Can we move on? Can we move on?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, so that's a summary of how to write a report. Now let's look at our question. We're looking at LIMACO. So we're looking at LIMACO. And then we're going to practice a few of these things and do as much as we can in our, I think it's a evaluation question. So we'll just look at it in detail. Okay, so please, as usual, this will log us out very quickly, very soon. And once it logs us out, please just reconnect immediately. Please just reconnect. So we're looking at LIMACO now. So please, who will read for us? Because if you look at this, you'll see that this will take us a while to even read. The reading of it is still very engaging. So please, who is reading for us? Thelma, have you read recently?
Which one? Sorry.
LIMACO.
Thank you. Let me go.
Okay, so like I said, I'm saving all the computations we are doing for the various questions. So at any time we could get them if we want to look through what we did in class. So we're looking at LIMACO. Okay, so please, who's reading for us? Yeah?
Brian,
Yes?
where is it?
What
What number?
what book are you using?
Question.
What book are you using?
PPP now.
Huh?
PPP.